somehow in the last 100 years, our education system has organized itself around the concept of American exceptionalism. It would be much more useful to look at the history of the last 100 years in terms of American universalism. Hot take. It's not just in the United States of America. It's not just in Canada. I spent a memorable year and a half of my life in the school system over in merry old England. They are completely consumed. The British are completely consumed with the asymmetrical and even parasitic relationship between England and the United States of America in the last 100 years. And they, in their hand-wringing way, teach the next generation the history of the world through the lens of, framed in terms of the question of American exceptionalism. I have family in France, you might say. I have an ex-wife. I have a daughter that I never get to see growing up in France. I know a fair bit about what's going on in the French education. You cannot imagine the extent to which the French worldview is utterly preoccupied with and utterly demented by this concept of American exceptionalism. Is the problem really that we think America is different from all other countries? Or is it, on the contrary, that we treat America as creating a universal set of standards for all humanity? What is a republic? The United States of America. What does the history of republicanism in France begin with? The American Revolution, as a matter of fact. What is a constitution? How does a system of courts of laws work? And the police and slavery and the abolition of slavery and human rights and World War II. Oh yeah, America, America, America. In fact, the whole way that we remember and write the history of the 20th century, the whole way that we remember and write kind of the second half of the 19th century, and the way we understand modernity now, it doesn't derive from treating the United States of America as a unique, exceptional case. It derives from a refusal to recognize what's unique about the United States of America, and so too a refusal to recognize the unique disadvantages of the United States of America. The concept of multiculturalism, the multicultural society, the mosaic society, the melting pot society, these are utterly American concepts. They begin with a guy called Governor Morris, who you probably never heard of before you heard his name on my YouTube channel. And if this is the first time you've seen a video on my channel, welcome. Governor Morris, most important person in the history of the United States of America. You've never heard of before. One of the most important people in the history of the world. The slogan that appears on the base of the Statue of Liberty is a poetic rephrasing of a quotation from Governor Morris. Someone might complain, there's nothing about multiculturalism in the American Constitution. Correct. There's nothing about multiculturalism in the Declaration of Independence. Correct. But multiculturalism, it's declared by Governor Morris, who is the single most important and influential person in American politics in that period. And he's in the top 10 for French politics and the French Revolution. By the way, he's there. He's in Paris. He's in Versailles. As all that happens, he's an incredibly important person. And that was his doctrine and his idea. Yeah, so somehow, countries like Sweden and Austria, all right, they've come to embrace this particular notion of multiculturalism and the idea that the rights of man, equal rights, entails all the races of the world and all the languages of the world living together in one city at one time. Austria and Sweden and Spain, all kinds of countries in Europe that really they're in no way part of this cultural development that's very uniquely American, very uniquely produced by the conditions of guilt about slavery in the United States of America, guilt about the American Empire, guilt about genocide in the United States of America. It's just been grafted onto Europe as if this uniquely American solution for a uniquely American problem made sense just as well in Sweden, so on and so forth, within merry old England itself, right? As if it makes sense for every major city in the world to imitate New York and to have a Chinatown, right? And how do you want to put it? An Arab town? No one says that. I don't know why we don't. We say Chinatown. We don't say Arab town. We don't say any other kind of town. To have, a whole bunch of little colored in squares on the map for different linguistically defined minorities, religiously defined minorities, ethnically defined minorities, whatever you want to say. And I've seen this dead serious. People reproach the Japanese for not getting on board. People are like, oh, Japan. Japan doesn't embrace refugees the way we do. Japan doesn't embrace multiculturalism the way they do. By the way, Japan does have plenty of Chinatowns, right? They just don't have Africa Town and Mexican Town and Arab Town. They don't have all this. They got a lot. Yokohama, Japan, has a lot of Chinese people. They have a lot of Chinese. They have a lot of Koreans. They're just not going beyond that in terms of multiculturalism, right? So in a limited sense, they are the multicultural say, oh yeah. Is the problem American exceptionalism, or is the problem American universalism? Here's the thing. Everyone in Sweden knows what it means to be Swedish. If I say to you the Swedish language, what language do I mean? Oh, hot take. If I say to you the Swedish race, the Swedish ethnicity. Now, if I say to you the American language, what do I mean? If I say to you the Canadian language, what do I mean? If I say to you the American race, the Canadian race, the American ethnicity, the Canadian ethnicity, what could I possibly mean? All right. The United States and Canada are so-called multicultural countries built on a genocide everyone's aware of and nobody understands. I will say this for the 1,000th time on my YouTube channel. I know what it's like to walk up to a bank machine in Canada and have 3 buttons I can press. Do you want service in English, French, or Chinese? I've never once seen a button for Cree, Ojibwe, Mohawk, Inuit. If you say the Canadian language, hilariously, people assume you mean a standard for English orthography that is a mixture of American and British spellings. So in the United States of America, the word color is spelled C-O-L-O-R. In England, it's spelled C-O-L-O-U-R. And for no reason, there's an official standard. Like in your computer, if you check the settings, you can select Canadian spell check for the Canadian language. Sweden doesn't have that problem. Okay, Tamil Nadu doesn't have that problem. Sri Lanka doesn't have that problem. China doesn't have that problem. Japan doesn't have that problem. America has some unique problems. It has some unique disadvantages. And the great irony of our history right now is that the solutions the American people have selected, I should say. Nobody voted on this stuff. They just selected it kind of by default. The particular solutions they've selected are only making everything worse and worse and worse and worse. And if I were an optimist, I'd say to you, it's going to get worse and worse until there's a revolution. But I don't believe that. I think the next 10 years in the United States of America is more likely to resemble Japan's lost decade, just to be a period of generalized inertia and political lethargy in the context of very real bankruptcy. In case you didn't know, just ready to do a quick Google search. USA debt to GDP ratio. And this is what it looks like. They were the most indebted in the World War II period, right? And there's the struggle to pay on the debt in World War II. Around 1985, people start warning, guys, it's getting worse and worse. I remember from 1985 to 1995, what, guys, if we don't get government spending under control, we don't get it under control, it's getting worse. And it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And now it's worse. It's worse than it was during World War II. I don't predict a revolution. As Bob Dylan said, people have a lot of forks and knives, and they've got to cut something. However, let me ask you a question right now. Please don't Google this. I'll actually, you know what? Go ahead, Google it. What do I care? How many barrels of oil per year does Saudi Arabia produce? How many barrels of oil per year does the United States of America produce? And you know what? Let's just throw in a third one. How many barrels of oil per year does evil Russia produce? Vladimir Putin's Russia. Do you want to look it up with me? Do you guys want to Google that? I know what you're all thinking, right? Russia is an oil-rich state, right? Saudi Arabia is an oil-rich state, right? Let's just do Wikipedia list of countries by barrels of oil per annum. I think we still say barrels as the standard. There we go. List of countries by oil production. Okay, yeah, there we go. Gee, so here I have the list of countries organized by the total amount, and this is in BBL per day. BBL sounds really naughty, really racy. Sounds like a category of hardcore pornography. BBL. So BBL is the official unit for barrels. Okay, so Russia. I can cut and paste this. Again, I don't know if this. I don't really know the unit here, so I don't know if this is millions or billions or whatever it is. Okay, but it looks to me like this is 10.2 million of whatever the unit is. Okay, 10.2 million. And this is not per year. This is per day. 10.2 million per day in the year 2022. So whatever this unit is. Okay. Saudi Arabia. 10.6 million per day. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, the United States of America is not an oil-rich country. The United States of America, it's not like Saudi Arabia. It's not like Russia. Oh no, America's in this very weak position of, we rely on imported oil. America, this is 2022. 11.8 million BBL per day, 11.8 million standardized barrels of oil per day. You want to know what's fucked up? Canada produces more than Iraq at 4.5 million, which is less than the United States, obviously, but with a dramatically lower population. There are the numbers. Just post it in the chat. American exceptionalism. How did America pay down the debt after World War II? We can simplify World War II as America conquered the whole world. It's a great summary. What happened in World War II? America conquered the whole fucking known world, and it was really expensive, guys. I'm going to say this. You cannot imagine how much money it cost for America to conquer the whole world in World War II. It's easy to forget. World War II didn't just happen in Europe. It happened in Japan, it happened in Africa. You can read about it happened in Myanmar. The Americans fought in Myanmar. I'm not kidding you. There were sea battles out in remote places in the Pacific, like Samoa and things. You wouldn't believe it. It really was a world war. You built, I'm sorry, you want to do a cost estimate in your head to build a flotilla of ships to sail from the United States to Japan to go out and fight the Germans and all this stuff? Okay, it was really expensive. The United States of America conquered the whole world. And if you didn't know, you also bankrolled the Soviet Union. You stuffed money into Stalin's pockets, and one of the most, immoral and regrettable things in history. So, you bankrolled the Russian side of the war to create this unholy alliance between the United States and Joseph Stalin's Russia to fight against the Nazis, which is a terrible, unspeakable long-term consequence. How do you think America did that? Okay. And how do you think America paid back the debt afterwards? In that period, World War II and the aftermath of World War II, it's not so much that America's oil and gas production was extraordinary compared to what it is now, right? But many other parts of the world, their oil and gas reserves either were not discovered yet, or they were not being exploited yet. They didn't have the pumps and refineries and so on set up. So the significance of American oil reserves, if you think of it as a pie chart, their piece of the pie, the value in dollars, and those dollars as a percentage of all the dollars in the world, the value of American oil was much, much greater. Japan, within its current borders, has zero oil, famously. Does that sound like a fair fight to you? Now look, we can talk about American exceptionalism. We can talk about Japanese exceptionalism, right? Who's in a better position for the next 100 years? The United States of America or Japan, right? They're both bankrupt. They're both flat broke, right? But look at what Japan has going for it. And look at the unspeakable misery on the streets of Seattle, on the streets of Portland, Oregon, on the streets of Philadelphia. Look at the disintegrated, pathetic excuse for a society you've got. Look, I don't want to insult J.J. McCullough personally about this because I don't know how he rolls. Many years ago, he made a video in which he flew to Saskatchewan, Regina, the capital city of Saskatchewan. That's in the middle of Canada, the middle of nowhere. And, he just walked the streets like a normal guy. And, in the politest way possible, he was kind of talking about what a depressing, horrible place this was. It's a play video, but you can tell. I lived in the past, back when I was studying Indigenous languages, first language was created. I've lived in the same city in Saskatchewan, so I know just what he's talking about. I do not know today, at his current level of fame and accomplishment, when J.J. McCullough goes to New York City, when J.J. McCullough goes to Los Angeles, or when he goes to Philadelphia or Portland, Oregon. I don't know if he does that anymore. I don't know if he just walks the streets. Joe Biden doesn't. I don't know if he's lost touch with reality that way, right? When we arrived in New York City, I think it was 128th Street. Maybe it was 125th. We could check the map. So we took a bus in from the airport. You remember the name of the airport? It's the lesser of the two airports, right? Yeah. Here's a real pop quiz for you. We took the bus in from the airport and got out, I think, on 128th Street. That's what it looks like. I'm looking at the map here. So technically in Harlem, but in the part of the Manhattan Island landmass up there. If it wasn't 128th, it was 125th. Yeah. So LaGuardia Airport, 125th Street. Looks like that's it. So up there, around 125th Street. Okay. I can't even say that's the worst street in New York City. Okay. Okay. Want to say this. So you get out, you go from LaGuardia Airport to 125th Street, whatever it is up there in Manhattan Island. You just get out, you're looking out the window of the bus, and you get out of the bus and you are looking up and down that street. There is not one street in all of Japan that bad. There is not one street in all of Thailand that bad. There is not one street in all of Cambodia that bad. Now, we have J.J. McCullough out here pointing the finger at Donald Trump because Donald Trump dares to say in the United States of America there are third world conditions. You're goddamn right there are third world conditions. Okay? And I saw it's all over New York. Whether you're talking about 125th Street or down on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, I have seen conditions in New York City that are worse than anything in Cambodia, without even getting into Japan. Breakdown of law and order, breakdown of civilization. I'm not exaggerating. It's that bad. Okay? I don't care if Donald Trump says it. I don't care if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says it. I've got a question for you. Why doesn't Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez say it? There's nothing right-wing or left-wing about this. There's no reason why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez herself couldn't say exactly the same thing I just said. Well, she couldn't say, hey, you know what? I took the bus in from LaGuardia Airport to Manhattan. And when I got out, look, wow, it's mind-blowing. And I'm afraid for my life. No, just me personally, I'm not, because I'm a big, scary-looking dude. But like, I can ask, Melissa is not so big and scary-looking. I think if I wasn't there with you, I think you really should be. Whether or not you should be afraid for your life. And we were there broad daylight, you know? Yes. So she's mentioning also carrying your luggage and being afraid your luggage is going to get stolen from you or some of that. But just, again, it's not even about theft. Like, you're not really worried about rational, clear-minded people. The number of people who are drug addicts and who are going insane on the sidewalk in front of you, people who are out of control. I'm not saying they're going to kill you with like some particular intention. They can shove you or kill you or attack you, and they don't even know what they're doing. People who are out of their minds on drugs. Tokyo Police Department, don't play that. Phnom Penh Police Department, don't play that. In Cambodia, they have better standards of law and order than that. Now, measuring the quality of education. Sorry, I'm going to come back to this question. Sorry. When I say the breakdown of law and order, the breakdown of civilization, really brief digression here. What is it you suppose existed before that's being broken down, and what is it being broken down into, right? Now, again, Sweden actually has a culture, actually has a language, has an identity. There's something there to be broken down, right? And we can talk about what was there before and what's being broken down, and in what ways is it getting better and what ways is it getting worse. The United States of America is in a uniquely, perilously weak situation because of what existed before, right? It's not massive in this way. It can't endure. It can't cope with the same kinds of challenges that, to use a topical example, that Amsterdam has coped with. I am not saying Amsterdam is paradise. I'm also not saying Tokyo is paradise. I'm not saying Cambodia is paradise. But the Dutch, whether it is in their wisdom or their folly, they became a multicultural society. They legalized or decriminalized drugs. They encouraged becoming a massively drug-addicted society. They legalized and decriminalized prostitution and became a massively prostitution-run society. And now they are a multicultural, multilingual, multi-ethnic society with tons of drug addiction and prostitution everywhere, and that's the plan they embrace. But nevertheless, we talk about, we can talk about the breakdown of Dutch civilization, talk about Swedish and Danish and other civilizations. But there was a civilization there to begin with. There was something to break down, and now we can talk about what it's broken down into, right? So, again, China, Japan, most of the world. But when you're building on top of genocide in this way, right? So again, the next category I was going to move into was education. Um, at the start of his video, J.J. McCullough says, like, well, these people say that America is, such a bad country and such a dire circumstance. But, when you look at it, America is still near the top of the list as being one of the most wealthy and successful societies. I noticed he doesn't actually talk about any of the numbers or any of the lists, right? Oh yeah, JJ. How does America stand on the violent crime list? How does it stand on the murder list? How does it stand on the drug addiction? Really? Really? Oh, so America, you're saying it's better than South Africa? Another British Empire disaster of a side. Oh, really? What are you comparing America? What list? What numbers? But it's always amused me, the reluctance of people in white Western countries. JG, the only specific metric I can remember mentioning is life expectancy. Correct. Are you really willing to look at the quality of education in New York City compared to Hong Kong? Why not? Why not, you fucking hypocrite? Okay, Hong Kong. Do you know the historical circumstances that produced Hong Kong? Hong Kong's not a utopia. I mean, you can basically talk about two periods, before World War II and after World War II. But in both cases, both in the pre-World War II period and after, it was totally shambolic, improvised, outlying island of the British Empire. The plan was no plan. The government was it was a very improvised government and so on. The British wanted to maintain a harbor there, and they wanted to maintain a garrison of soldiers to make sure there weren't too many pirates. Nobody can look at Hong Kong as the Athenian democracy of the 20th century. At different times, you can question whether or not there was any democracy at all, or how much there was, or what have you. Hong Kong was a very strange social experiment, and nobody was really paying much attention. I'll give you a quick example. If you don't know this, Hong Kong is one of the few societies in the world where there is no land ownership. Nobody owns land. Nobody owns a house. Nobody owns an apartment. So it sounds like communism. It's not. It's capitalism, right? It's the most capitalist society in the world. But they came up with this arrangement and said, well, look, it's not very much land. Let's just set up a thing where everyone rents and leases from the government, and then they can sublet to other people, and it'll work out. It worked out. Nobody would say, like, do you think the finest minds from Cambridge University in England made Hong Kong their special project to say, we are going to create the most outstanding system of education in Hong Kong for all levels of society? Do you think there were like elite white British people in the aristocracy or something who said, you know what I really care about? I care about Tamil migrant laborers in Hong Kong and Singapore and how those guys are doing and their quality of education. The British Empire didn't give a fuck. Okay. I mean, like the cruel indifference of the British Empire, whether it's towards any of these countries. How is it possible that Hong Kong, a deeply divided society, Hong Kong that doesn't even speak one Chinese language, that's divided between like 6 different mutually incomprehensible Chinese languages that are then divided against English. And again, you got people from India, you have all these different immigrant groups there thrown together in a shambolic, unplanned, multicultural society. They kick your ass in education year after year for 50 years. You suck. New York is a failure. Los Angeles is a failure. And the most bizarre irony of all, Hong Kong beats London, England. Hong Kong has better education than, especially once you get into the second string cities in England, they have better education than Lancashire or whatever the fuck you want to say. No offense to Lancashire. Okay, so you're telling me the second-rate imitation of the British Empire education system in Hong Kong is superior to like the second-rate imitation of the British Empire education system in New York. This is New York. This is Los Angeles. Have you taken a look at education in New Orleans? I have. If you have taken a look at education in the state of Florida, it gets worse. It gets worse than the city of New York. You know? How is it possible that like a group of like Chinese refugees gathered together in Hong Kong, and a very important parallel, group of Chinese refugees gathered together in Taiwan, another parallel, a group of displaced Chinese people from Malaysia who all had to suddenly regroup on the island of Singapore. How is it that all three of those societies have a better system of education than your ass, better law and order than your ass, have better hospitals than your ass? And how is it possible that neither Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, nor Bernie Sanders, nor Donald Trump, nor anyone else in the American spectrum is even asking this question, is raising these examples for comparison? And why aren't you, J.J. McCullough? Why aren't you holding both the United States and Canada to a higher standard? Now, let me just come back to the one statistic I've burdened you with here. Okay? Russia, 10.2 million barrels of oil per day. Saudi Arabia, 10.6 million barrels of oil per day. The United States of America, the single most oil-rich country in the history of the world, presently 11.8 million per day. And the real significance is over a period of more than a century, right? They had the oil production going at that earlier stage when they had a bigger piece of the pie, right? 50 years ago, right? This has been going on and on. The United States developed its oil industry early, so they had a huge advantage over the rest of the world. In the World War I period and the World War II period, so on and so forth. So I get a second opinion here from the audience. Elijah Bennett writes in, quote, "I've been to Lancashire. Education there is the same as the rest of Northern England. It's not good." Thanks for taking the time. I used to go to school in Glasgow. I was the toughest guy in the school. Let me tell you. Yeah. Okay. Just tell me something. What's the secret to success in Hong Kong? How many million barrels of oil per day does Hong Kong produce? How many million barrels of oil per day does Singapore produce? How many million barrels of oil per day does Taiwan produce? All right. Now, there is an argument that in terms of oil wealth specifically and natural resources wealth, so like we say, oil, gold, diamonds, a few other things of this, that Canada is the wealthiest country in the world per capita, right? So 4.5 million barrels of oil per day in capita, right? So the United States of America has more than double that, a little bit more. Saudi Arabia has double that, okay? But think about how few people live in Canada. So it's an unbelievable wealth generated by the oil industry in Canada relative to the population. We also have gold. We also have diamonds. We have a few other things. We have a steel industry. We have an aluminum industry, right? Unspeakable, unbelievable wealth. What is Hong Kong? Well, okay, let's just say, give you a specific example. Hong Kong in the aftermath of World War II. Have you seen photographs of this? It was bombed to shit, homie. The Japanese, it was a normal story. The Japanese conquered it. The Japanese were pushed out, and everything's in ruins. Singapore, after World War II, kind of looks like a parking lot. They're black and white photographs. Japan with a little bit damaged, Taiwan, a little bit damaged in World War II. You think so? Compared to what? Compared to Canada? Compared to the United States? The level of destruction? Okay, South Korea, right? Utterly ruined by World War II, and then the period of time we refer to as the Korean War. right? Obviously, communist China. Why do you think, with all this money, with all this oil, why do you think we fundamentally suck in all these ways that matter so much? And let me ask you, left, right, or center, have you ever seen, have you ever heard another YouTube channel even raising these questions? Why is it only me? Why is it only à-bas-le-ciel? Why isn't it Donald Trump? Seriously, Donald Trump can look at the quality of healthcare in Taiwan. Donald Trump can look at the quality of healthcare in Japan, the same as Bernie Sanders. It's not just Bernie Sanders who can do this and ask these questions. Why isn't Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez looking at the quality of education, whether she chooses Hong Kong or Singapore or whatever? Why isn't Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez flying there? You go to whichever example she chooses and then fly back to Louisiana, fly back to Florida and go hug these poor black kids in these horrible schools that are so fucking hopeless that all anyone wants to do is either be a basketball player or a rapper or a gangster, and say to them, I want to give you the same hope that poor kids growing up in Singapore have, the same hope that poor kids growing up in Hong Kong have, because they have a fucking education system that works. And here you are, whether it's Louisiana or Florida, frankly, a pretty large percentage of people in New York City growing up in this dire hopelessness. You know, why doesn't, I don't care if it's someone right wing or someone left wing or someone in the center. Why don't you fucking talk about what it's like to get out of the airport in Taipei and you can feel safe walking down the street in a bikini? You can feel, it doesn't, male or female, doesn't matter. You know, you can feel totally safe getting out in the airport in Taipei or Japan or something and say, look, let's get real. On the streets of New York, the streets of Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Philadelphia, I feel afraid for my life. I wouldn't let my daughter walk herself home from school. I feel afraid if I don't have a gun. I just walking down the street, just everyday activities. You know, the decay of law and order. You know, it has decayed. It's torn our society apart to this extent. And you know what? You're starting off with a society that was built on slavery and genocide. You're starting off with a society that was internally divided, invidious, and yes, to use J.J. McCullough's term, self-hating in a way that Japanese society never was, in a way that Chinese society never was. And we have not begun to find answers because we can't even let ourselves perceive the problem. We can't even ask these questions. We insist, as J.J. McCullough does, I'm not even really paraphrasing him, we insist on seeing America as the exceptionalism, living this lie, this myth of American exceptionalism, regarding America as the ultimate society, as the apex, as the pinnacle of the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries in their development of a new civilization. When the United States of America instead represents a kind of nadir, it's a failure, it's a cautionary tale for the rest of the world to learn from. The irony is, okay, I love American culture and I hate Japanese culture, all right? In terms of my bias, what I like is the attitude of 50 Cent growing up in New York City who says, I've got nothing and nothing, and now I've got to figure out how to come up with something. I love the hopelessness. I love the grind. I mean, that's the energy of Detroit. That's the energy of New York City. And it's the energy I bring here that you're feeling in this video right now. I love the nihilism that, you know, American ambition emerges out of. And I utterly despise the way people who grow up in comfortable Western European societies or comfortable East Asian societies go through their life with a kind of complacency. I love it. Okay. But I recognize that what I love about American society is rooted in desperation.